Hi.
Hello, LinkedIn. Just like that, here we are. Mark Stabina,
Chris.
Chris Grimm.
Yep.
Well, this is my first LinkedIn Live, Chris. I don't know about you.
It is my first LinkedIn Live.
Both
So we're
virgin.
doing big new things today.
So exciting. And we are talking about what you see on your screen, masculine and feminine energies in modern organizations and more, and topics around that topic. And the reason why we're doing this is because we did this in person in Austin during South by Southwest. It was last month, and it was enjoyable. From all reports and the feedback we got, it was impactful and successful. And we wanted to replicate what we did in person at Soho House for people that weren't able to join us. So here we are doing this LinkedIn Live for the first time. Chris, did you have fun doing that talk?
I loved it, actually. And I'm so glad we're doing this. And my name is Chris Grimm, everybody, if you don't know me. I am a coach and a consultant, and I've been working in corporate environments for about 27 years. And in broader context, coaching people outside of work for about 7 or 8 of those years. And I'm thrilled to be here with Mark.
How do we know each other?
We know each other because of a superhero that we have in common. I'll just shout out to Sean Lippman, CEO of the company Feedonomics. Sean's been my client a number of times, and he introduced me to you because you played rugby together, right?
We coached rugby together. When I lived in Santa Monica 10 years ago, I met Sean on the beach, like the same scene where they filmed Baywatch, basically. We were running around in little shorts playing touch rugby and became instant friends. We share the rugby background. He used to play, I used to play. And professionally, he really took me under his wing as a mentor. And I currently work for his company as a coach these days, Feedonomics. Shout out to all my Feedos.
Yeah, right. And now you're what? You are a hybrid, right? You are major broadcast guy slash leadership coach, which is part of the reason we're doing this together, everybody, because we have been very pleasantly talking about topics that we felt like, wait a minute, why are we just talking about them? Why shouldn't we involve other people in this conversation? And now it seems like this topic it doesn't always use the same language, right? But we are definitely seeing the evolution of the workplace. We're seeing energy and characteristics and leadership that for a long time were one way. And now they're expanding, right? So whether that's through diversity and inclusion, or whether it's just more people using different kinds of energy and behavior. Anyway, we're going to get into that. So Mark, I'll let you pace us here.
Okay, I'll pace us. Probably should give a quick intro to me. You alluded to it, a very quick intro. So I mentioned my background in professional rugby and how that led me to here. I broke my neck playing rugby a little over 10 years ago, and that was an awakening of sorts. But I had a tough transition. And for those of you who have been through any transition, maybe your career, as a parent, there's so many ways that we experience transition. This was a huge one for me, and I was feeling uncertain and fearful and lost and anxious. So I needed to embark on a personal growth journey. I was committed to living life to the fullest. I felt like I was given a second chance. And through my studies and learning about myself, and in particular, really leaning into emotional intelligence, which is my favorite topic. And this is led to this discussion, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But when I learned about emotional intelligence and combining it with my experience as a professional rugby player in high performance, high pressure environments, team environments, I could use that experience and my new learnings about emotional intelligence and apply them to leadership. And I started off helping athletes with their transition. There's a lot of athletes out there that are struggling with what's next once they finish sport. Their identity is tied to being an athlete for most of their life, which was me. So sharing my story, how I navigated the transition, still am, by the way, I'm still learning about myself, but I found my purpose, I found my passion, and that is helping other people. That is leadership. And you mentioned Sean Lippman before with Feedonomics. He introduced me to leadership coaching in the corporate space, asked me to come in and help him with leadership coaching with his people. And that was 5 years ago, and I'm still there today. And now I coach other businesses also. I was introduced to Chris Grimm, thankfully. She is a mentor, a colleague, an ally, and we have these wonderful discussions, just the two of us over breakfast, over coffee, over the phone, about our experiences of the modern workplace, modern organizations, what she experiences with her coaching of Fortune 100 company CEOs, me with my experience of coaching athletes through transition, middle management in e-commerce companies. And we see the same kind of theme coming up. We align on them. And when we have these great discussions, we're like, let's have these discussions with other people. I'm sure, let's learn from other people. So here we are talking about this.
I think just to kind of bring us here, because that was awesome, Mark. And it's a great time for you and other people who are thinking about leadership coaching. So whether this is a new thought for you, or whether you're a leader who's wondering how to make change or how to live in organizations right now, because it's not the way it was before. And this is part of what sparked this, everybody, is that Mark and I started talking. Of course, he was talking to me about being new to leadership coaching inside companies, bringing what he can from sports, which is amazing, by the way, and a lot of really meaty, great things for people to learn. But as we were trying to find the intersection of those points, I was like, hey, wait, time out. We can't not talk about what's happening right now. It was happening before the pandemic, but it's happening in a very big way right now, which is, I'm calling it the evolution of organizations. I think that modern organization, we decided to call it that, means contemporary. It means right now. It means big and small. So for anybody here listening, I want you to know that you don't have to work in a big company to hear what we have to say today. In fact, it doesn't matter either if you're a leader, right? So even if you are someone who never wants to be a leader, or maybe you are aspiring to be a leader, there's a whole bunch of gold that we have to talk about. And I think we should jump right in because you're going to see that as soon as we do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Are you saying let's get our mission control, Heather, to put the slideshow up again to guide us through that, like we did at Soho House? We were supported by technology. You know, we have to. We've got old school, but we're trying to go new school as well. So let's have it. This is what we covered.
Oh, look at that magic
during South by Southwest, our title screen, and on the next slide we started off talking about feminine energy versus masculine energy. They're becoming buzzwords, aren't they, really? And but I think there's still a lot to understand, and there's a lot that is misunderstood. People seem to attach gender, being a male and being a female, exclusively to the energies, and thinking that women exclusively have feminine energy and men masculine energy. But of course, we possess both. And what's important is understanding how those energies show up, our, I guess, percentage when we exude masculine energy versus when we exude feminine energy, and whether it works or not for the situation. So that's, as you can see here, we just, they're in alignment there. They're almost polar. We're looking at the polarity here. So where feminine energy is more intuitive, the masculine energy is more cognitive, thinking and logical and rational. Creativity. Yeah. You take it from you.
I want to just emphasize something you just said. So for everybody here who's watching or listening to us, it is important. We picked we could have said something different. And historically in corporate environments, because we've run big training organizations and programs for big companies, like Mark said before, when he was talking about my background. I think it's an amazing time because we can use the word energy and people don't look at us as sideways as they would have 10 years ago. And the reason we picked the word energy and not characteristics, right, is that we want to get away from actually a dualistic conversation. You have to understand what Mark said. I want to put a little pin in it for everyone. There's some learning for you today. We all have access to all of this, right? So it doesn't matter what body you're in. Today, we are not talking about gender, even though sometimes your brain is going to want to talk about gender. And you might say, wait a minute, I'm a man and I've always used all my masculine energy. That's fine. We want you to understand, though, that all of us have access to all of it. And that energy, and Mark just started, and I'm going to give it back to him in a second. He just started talking about this, right? This energy is in us and it is accessible as you are hopefully intentionally choosing your behavior, choosing the way you show up. And that's part of what we want to talk about today, because in the past, and someone who's 27 years of experience in organizations, in the past, we didn't always have those choices, right? We had expectations around showing up. And this is the last thing I think I'll say about gender, because I know people are going to say it if I don't say it, right? We have been historically functioning in ways where if you were a man, you were expected to show up in a certain way. If you were a male leader or a female leader, people expected you to look and feel a certain way. And if you didn't do that, if you crossed those bounds or didn't stay in the lane, if you will, that you were put in, it wasn't good for you. It might not have been good for your career. I think that still exists, but it is evolving. And with that, I'll pass the baton back to you, Mark, so you can.
No, thank you, Chris. That was great. I mean, people had an opportunity to look at the common characteristics of the two energies here, the polarity. So we don't need to spend too much time on that. It's all about self-awareness. That's where it starts. Understanding exactly what you just said, Chris, and then getting a sense for, so when I'm exuding or when I'm demonstrating this behavior, that might suggest that I'm in my masculine energy. And when I'm being this way, it's possibly or probably feminine energy. And I'll come back to what I said before. The self-awareness is where it starts, understanding these energies, but then understanding how we show up. And some of these might be more of a comfort zone for us, and that's fine. That's the self-awareness piece. But knowing that I might need more masculine energy in this situation, so I get to step into it or practice it, just as with feminine. And then understanding when other people are in their masculine and or feminine energy. That's where we get to start. And I want to just move on from this slide and talk about the organizations, because Chris, you started to talk about it. Let's stay on this for a second. What we're trying to achieve is balance, is knowing the two styles, having your objective as an individual, as a team, as an organization, as a company. We need to start there. So when we're grounded and connected to our vision, our principles, what our objectives are results-wise and also relationship building, because they go hand in hand. We can't get results without working on trust and building relationship with our team members. And this is the balance that will help you achieve those objectives. Striving for this balance.
It's true. And everybody, if you are even making mental or physical notes, I do want to say there's something really important here. Mark just said it, but I want to just put a pin in this. At the seed point of what many of us experience as toxicity in the workplace in particular. Let's just stay there today, since we're talking about modern organizations, right? So oftentimes, because we coach people all day, every day, we hear stories. And, right now it is a popular conversation to look at historically what was either assertive behaviors that sometimes became aggressive or even toxic, right? There's a continuum there. And many of that is looked at around things that are very, very tangible and highly masculine. And it's part of what Mark was showing there. And if you noticed on the slide that had the balance, thanks for putting that back, Heather, you'll see that the balance mushes them together in the middle, right? And it gives you options. So I want everybody to think about that, right? Like, so when you're thinking about choosing new behavior, each one of these has a balance, right? You can take action really fast, or you can pause before you take action. That's actually a balance between our masculine, which is a higher achieving, focused energy of getting stuff done, like Mark was saying, or we could pause a little bit, which is sits more in our feminine energy, which is receiver energy. I'm not going to go through all those bullets today, but if you're interested, I'm sure we will be posting and having an expanded conversation around this available to you. But I just wanted to pin that to everybody, right? The balance, it doesn't mush them into a new thing. It actually brings both of them accessible to you all the time.
Great point. Great point. And I'll just come back to it again. It is all dependent on what our objectives are in the moment, what our goals are. Because then when you have access, as you said, Chris, you can choose powerfully what's going to work. And over time, you'll learn what works and what doesn't work. So balance, depending on what our objectives are. And I think that's a good segue when we talk about objectives. What are we trying to achieve as an organization? What are we trying to achieve as a team? What am I trying to achieve as an individual? And draw upon the masculine and feminine energy to serve that objective. We can now talk about objectives and structure of the organizations of the past compared to modern organizations. What do you say, Chris? And this is, with your experience, you have anecdotal evidence of how modern organizations have changed. So let's jump into that because it's fascinating. I can listen to you talk about this all day.
That's really nice of you. Hopefully everybody else can too. Heather, can you go to the next slide, please?
But don't take all day.
Yes, sir. Gotcha. Good feedback. Okay. So everybody, this is something I am evangelizing. Those of you who are watching and listening to this who know me, you've probably seen this before. I feel like it is one of the most important conversations that we can bring to everyone right now. This is happening whether you're paying attention or not, and whether you do it on purpose or not. This is what we call the rise of the agile workplace. I'm not using the word agile here like an engineering organization. I'm talking about broad shifts in the way the workplace is functioning. This is not going to happen overnight. It was happening before the pandemic, everybody. You'll see there on the one side that you see like a pyramid, if you will. That is what's called a traditional hierarchical organizational structure. It's the way all of us were not only socialized to think about work, but as an organization goes from small to large and you add more people, it was the most organized way that organizations could grow and then effectively and efficiently function. Because whether you're a publicly held company or a small startup, etc., you're in business to have results. And the most efficient and effective way to do that, specifically as you add lots of people and process and systems, is to have a structure that's organized, right? That's how it's worked. And by the way, I didn't just observe this, everybody. For 27 years, I've been coaching people to function well in organizations that look and feel like this. And so most of you, if you have a job or if you own a business, you probably have something that looks like this. And as you hire people, you probably got an org chart, I hope, some organized way to think about roles and who reports to who, etc. So I'm not saying that's going away, but what I want to show everyone, and then I'll be quick about connection to masculine and feminine energy, is that we are kind of evolving into more what are called network-based organizations and team-based organizations. Like I said, that's been happening for a while. Part of it is that as the baby boomer generation that was brought up in a world that was very traditional and hierarchical, as they continue to move out of the workplace, we're bringing in people who have a different set of values about work. And those people, by the way, I made two of those people. One's 23 and one's 20. So I can tell you they are socialized, of course, by the internet and social media, etc. You all know who we're talking about, and it might be you. Socialize to work in teams versus a structure, a hierarchy, or a real linear structure. And they're highly collaborative by nature because they have the tools and they've grown up with the tools to communicate with anyone at any time. So let me just connect the dots, everybody. The old traditional hierarchical structure, which isn't going away, required a lot of those masculine, energy-driven behaviors because it was efficient and organized and linear and focused and results-oriented. And oftentimes time-based, because if you're at a public company, you run on quarterly results that need to be predictable. In the future, I don't think that's completely going away, but because we're bringing people into the workplace that are naturally more collaborative, more innovative, used to things changing really fast, like all those updates we get on our phone all the time, right? We've been socialized to do things faster and to do things in new and different ways that aren't so linear. Right. So I just want to bring awareness to that. And Mark, I'll pass the baton to you if you want to maybe connect the dots even more about how you think about this.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Just as you were saying that, I was thinking about with the hierarchical structure that we all know well, that still exists, as you said, results driven was a key phrase you used. And yes, results are important. But we're seeing more and more, and we're hearing more and more this term burnout. So burnout came to mind, and that when you have that kind of structure and we are results driven at the expense of wellness of people, then you see burnout start to creep in more and more. And the desire for results, and throw in the pandemic, a lack of connectivity, all the other stresses that have been added onto this structure already, then people are becoming more and more cynical about their work, exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically, which again is a case for bringing in more collaboration, bringing in more of the feminine energies that we talked about, which another word that comes to mind is empathy. I think being an empathetic leader has you balance this desire around results and the energy that it takes and it needs with taking care of your people. And here's the irony of it is if you just, and there are companies, Chris, you can attest to this, where it's designed in a way that people are almost like robots. They're used as robots. There's a structure in place where it's highly efficient and stuff gets done, results come about, sometimes at the expense of people. And that's okay because it's designed in a way for high turnover. Someone else can come in and slot into the system and still get the results. But people don't really want that these days. People are looking for...
We're over it. I think many people are over it.
People are looking for the organizations that resemble this model to the right on your screen, right?
I think they are. But wait, let's just pause for a second because you said something important and I want to connect it for people. Before we came to this slide, I was mentioning something called assertive to aggressive to toxicity as an example of how something good, assertiveness, can turn into something bad, toxicity. And as Mark was just describing things like burnout, I just want to say that when we overuse our strengths in any system, we end up potentially with a place or relationships or structures that aren't good for the humans. That's what I meant when I said toxicity, by the way, everybody. I know it's thrown out there as a term, and oftentimes it's pointing at egregious, overtly bad behavior. And something Mark just said, maybe stop and say, I want to make sure we're all clear about something, right? Toxicity in organizations, big or small, is often when we have to overuse our strengths because either they're not working anymore, but we just keep using the same set of tools and behaviors. Like, I don't care if that doesn't work anymore. We still have to get it done. Work harder, work longer hours, right? That's a simple example, but it happens, right? So part of the reason we're doing this is to do what Mark is saying, which is open our eyes so that we are intentional about taking care of the humans. Part of taking care of the humans is actually paying attention to what are the values of people who are coming into the workplace. What's going to be the best way for us to structure work and structure our teams and structure the organization so that we can get the best out of people, but also that the people love working there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because people have a lot more options than they used to have. And I think that's important to know, right? So I think anybody here who, like I said, works in any way, and on LinkedIn, you probably work in some way. This needs to be an overt, intentional, new way of thinking. And Mark and I spent a lot of time talking about this, right? How do we coach people to be more self-aware on a regular basis? Choose new behaviors for yourself, balance, right? Because the old structure isn't going to go away tomorrow, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We are still going to work in organizations that need people to produce more. And like Mark said, there are some places where people are feeling like they're getting treated like a robot or a number or something that's not that important. And that's not great. So we do need to bring in more of those nurturing, empathetic ideas, behaviors, and energy, and find balance, because we're not shifting all the way over into that new way. I don't even know if in our lifetime.
Mm. And as you're saying that, there's a real opportunity. There's probably a lot of people listening or watching eventually, people in the room at South by when we had this discussion who are starting a company. What a great opportunity to get grounded in what's important for you. You talked about values, Chris. That's where it starts. Mm-hmm. You can, from the ground up, build a company and a culture that nurtures results and nurtures people and their efforts and values them and has them want to work there. And genuinely, you can gain so much fulfillment as a leader of that company when you provide that for people. And the challenge is, as the company grows, that might very well be the starting ambition and value. And then we as humans and our ego tend to get attached to the results and get away from taking care of people. Would you agree, Chris?
Oh, I think that you're right on. And I would say I'm actually working with some startups. And of course, I've put this slide in front of them and had this conversation. And I want to say to everybody, what Mark's saying is really important. I want to be a little bit more direct about this. Mm-hmm. Money as the motivator, money as the main way we are driving results, et cetera. And if you don't have a lot of it, right? So you're coming from a place of scarcity, and we all have it at some point in time, right? Like, so now I have to choose, I have to sacrifice, I have to grow my business, but also make decisions about how we grow. If you're not paying attention, you will probably make the decision that is going to be the most efficient and effective and cost effective for you. Well, that would be smart, right? It also can make you default to creating that pyramid instead of thinking about alternative ways, more innovative ways, maybe alternative ways of bringing your people into a team-based structure instead of defaulting to old solutions, because there's a ton of them available. I'll give you an example. Mark, I think you and I talked about this one day, performance appraisals. When a company, all of a sudden you add people, you put it in the, we just hired 25 people. Okay, how do we effectively and efficiently give them feedback? Well, they go out and they look for a system or an app or something to do that. Well, the ones that are existing in most cases, the tried and true products, they were built for pyramidal structures. They were built for organizations with highly structured linear process. Mm-hmm. That might be the most cost-effective choice at any time. It might not actually be something that sustains a culture of a network of teams that's more empathetic, that's more nurturing of people, It might be super linear. By the way, it might be the right decision at the time. What we're saying to everybody is, please know that this is very real. And as you as a leader or an individual contributor make choices, we want you to use this as a way of thinking, right? Like, what choice am I making?
Yeah. And Chris, can I just ask Heather to go to the next slide? Because I think it expands, it elaborates on this model to give. This is some examples, right, of how it
That's
can
right.
look. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mark. I have to say to everybody, this isn't an either or. We're in the messy middle is what I call it. That means every place. So even if you have a little startup, congratulations, and you've got 5 of you working in the garage or somewhere, or if you run a $3 billion organization, chances are you have a mix of these characteristics that are on this slide. You've probably got some consistent processes and systems. I hope you do, and structure and some top-down decision making. Why? Well, because that's how efficient organizations run.
Yeah.
And you also probably have, specifically, if you have people like under the age of 40, but now everybody is more flexible because the pandemic gave us a way to do our work in a way that was very different than before, and more flexibility, right? More tech, etc. So this is really great for people. I don't know if we were going to post this somewhere. We probably should make sure we do that. And so Heather, Mission Control, later we can do that so it's available to people off of both of our LinkedIn profiles. But I do want you to pay attention to this. And thanks, Mark, for pointing it out, because leaders and or individual contributors, whoever you are, this is about awareness first. That's what we're trying to drive. And it is okay for you to live in both worlds.
Exactly. And just as you said that, another thought came to my mind that is, I think, a useful mantra for leaders is that, you know, the words high performance is thrown around. I'm hired sometimes as a high performance coach. We play professional rugby. Sports people, military, they're often brought into companies, help us with our high performance. So I'm here to tell you that that doesn't just mean you lean into the qualities, masculine energy, as we talked about before, that helps with results. That balance you can achieve and must have balance between feminine and masculine to achieve high performance. And I think that is the misnomer of leaders, that, well, if we balance and we have more feminine energy, or we bring more empathy in and we start to, then are we compromising high performance? That's the myth.
I think that's right. I want to add something maybe to everybody, which is I just have been invited to speak to a lot of women's leadership groups lately, and it's been very fun. And one of the things that I'm learning is that, related to that, Mark, right? So for many people, but I'm going to speak specifically to females who have been in the workplace and who are continually trying to help redefine the workplace, right? Like, how do we redefine leadership? How do we welcome different kinds of leadership? How do we bring different styles in? Because the old models that we've been living off for a long time, and again, I've been teaching people those models, and they were effective. Sometimes they went off the rails, but most of the time they were effective to run the pyramid, everybody. And so I'm saying to my female leaders, but also anybody that I'm with, which is why I'm saying it now, self-awareness first is the most important. And Mark started there about 20 minutes ago. And it is important for you to know, like, historically, what has helped me be successful? What energy do I bring? What do I choose? What behaviors do I choose? What are my go-tos that make me feel successful? And if I have been on a high-performing team, how did I contribute? How did I show up? How much of that kind of masculine versus feminine did I need to rely on historically? What am I doing right now? And if I want to balance that out, what does that mean? And if we all don't do it as individuals first, it makes it really muddy when we try to do it as a group and people haven't done some individual exploration beforehand, right? Because then we have people all over the place, and Mark's talking. Mark's version, this is a great example because we talked about it. He comes from a different world than I do.
Mm-hmm.
I played rugby, professional rugby. I know nothing. I didn't even know what a scrum was, everybody. You had to explain it to me. But his world defined leadership and high performance in a way that I could not understand. And I'm saying this to everybody because literally everybody all day, every day that you're on Zooms with, or whether you're in person with, that's actually true. You don't actually know until you get into a conversation that is structured and someone's facilitating, like me or a Mark with a marker in our hand, right? What does leadership mean? What does high performance mean? And we can actually make this shift go a lot smoother if we become transparent with each other and authentic about, here's the kind of behaviors I use. Here's what I've used in the past. I'm going to do this a little different now. I want to be more collaborative, for instance. I want to add this. And you guys are going to look and maybe think I lost my mind. But I'm going to start showing up differently. It's those kind of conversations that are going to help us find this balance and have it not be so messy.
Well, and get there quicker. That's the key. We get there quicker through transparency, vulnerability. You've probably said that word already. And it is vulnerable to put yourself out there against the traditional structure where it's like, I'm a junior. Who am I to speak up and give an opinion or request a need? But that gets to change. And with that, as you said, Chris, is also the openness to receive that. Right? So it's giving each other permission to bring that transparency, to bring that vulnerability and express one another openly, and then create alignment around that.
Look, Heather, can you go back a slide? Because the words on this might be confusing with what I'm about to say. Mark just said something really great, you guys. So I want you to, I'm sure you can see this in the workplace. You just use the example of someone junior, right? Wanting to speak up. So that is a natural value that we now have living in organizations. We have people early in their career who feel like it should be okay for them to voice their opinion about things that are not okay. In the past, in traditional hierarchy, highly masculine driven, efficient, effective organizations that were linear, a lot of that wasn't okay, right? You didn't go to your boss's boss and have a conversation about something. You didn't have a Glassdoor to post your opinion or social media. Think about how that's changed from a values perspective, everybody, is that now we have lots of people who have been brought up with devices in their hand and the ability to comment on things through social or websites, or even if you think about our consumer experiences, customers are asked for their opinion. Look on Amazon. They ask you about your opinion about everything that you buy. And so that's an example of people coming into the workplace who are used to functioning like that thing in the circle, right? This kind of peer-to-peer interactions, not to be disrespectful, by the way, but just because they're used to being heard that way. We're used to participating in life that way. So I go to work and I'm like, wait, stop, time out. We have a problem and I'm not supposed to talk about it.
Right point.
Yeah, it's a great example because wow, is that front and center in a lot of organizations.
Amen.
Yeah. So how do you know? I think we're at about 40-minute mark.
Yeah, we're doing it again. I mean, this is for everyone. This is what we do, Chris and I. We schedule 30-minute meetings with each other, and an hour and 40 minutes later, we, having moved our meetings we're supposed to go to back, we have to wrap it up. We don't have to wrap it up, but Chris, I'll defer to you for how much longer we want to spend on this discussion. This can easily be a part 2. And there's a lot of spin-offs we can have as well. I was about to mention, dare I say it, generation. You talked about what we're used to. And as younger generations move into the workplace and the workforce, and the older generations that we're used to that structure, that's how we did it. I worked for a company for 35 years. I just put my head down and did what I was told until I got promoted, and then I gained more of a voice and more power, and then I got to the next position, and 35 years later, I had security and my pension, and it's time to retire. Mm-hmm. Those people are moving out of the workforce. The structure, as Chris has been outlining, is changing, and a lot of it by default as younger generations they're not used to that, and they're not looking for that. They're now looking for flexibility. They're looking for autonomy. They're looking to feel valued, and these conversations are becoming more commonplace. Mm-hmm. Not enough, and that's why we're here to play our part to sort of raise the awareness. But that's where we're heading. It's where it's happening. As Chris, you always say to me, it's here, but people just need to get on board.
It is here, and we don't need to go back to the slides, Heather. We can just stay right here. Mm-hmm. Thank you. But I do want to say to everyone, again, Mark, you just threw me a great ball there to take, which is generationally, one of the things, and for anybody watching or listening, I want you to really digest what I'm about to say. And it comes back to being self-aware first. If you have worked for a long time in traditional hierarchical organizations, there is a chance that you probably have a paradigm, right? A full set of mental models all layered in there about work that believe there are specific behaviors that you have to use at work. Sometimes those were called code of conduct. Sometimes, there were rules about work, the way we behaved at work, the way we didn't behave at work, what we wore to work, what we don't wear to work, right? There were a lot of rules for a very long time about what the pyramid hierarchy business work looked and felt like. I'm bringing our awareness to this because the people who are coming into the workplace, and thanks, we have a comment from Michelle. Thanks, Michelle. Yes, younger generations seem to be looking for more balance. It's not just work-life balance. They actually don't have the same paradigm that work needs to look and feel by the same set of rules that a whole bunch of us lived with for a very long time, right? So that's one of the big generational differences. And I know all of our clients in HR and in talent and culture, in diversity and inclusion, right? They're facilitating these conversations every day. Sometimes it probably doesn't feel like facilitation. What we do is maybe a little bit more fun sometimes. But I do think what you're saying is real, right? Like you have to, again, be self-aware. Like what has worked for me in the past? Where have I leaned? Like what behaviors were my go-tos? And what did that mean to my work experience? And what did that mean to my experience on a team? And what worked and what of that used to work for me is not working anymore. I'm doing a lot of coaching with leaders right now about that. Like we're in a new world. We have distributed, remote, hybrid, in person. We've got it all. And to be successful there, all of those linear, efficient behaviors that we used before with lots of masculine energies, go, 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 get it done, get it done. They're not working anymore. Mm-hmm. That's almost every conversation I have. There is some bit of it that's like, ooh, my go-tos not working anymore. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's a whole other set of things here. It's time for you to learn.
Well, yeah. And I come back to burnout, like a lot of clients coming to me complaining that their people are complaining about burnout, especially as the word is being used more and more. People are starting to look into it and understand it a little better. And when they are burnt out, they could just come and listen to this right now, or just exactly what you said, Chris, because they're not abiding by that concept, still in that old structure and being results driven, not allowing collaboration, balance, as we call it. Well, I think you said it before as well. People separate it. They turn up to work and they feel like the way I live outside of work, I can't bring in to work. And that can be problematic. That can also lead to burnout, right? Because and they're really just treating work as that thing we do, and then once my laptop closes, then my life begins. right? And that's outside of work. That's where I get to fully express myself and be in my joy and try and live life to the fullest.
Mm-hmm.
You get to do that in the 8 to 10 to 12 hours if you're at a startup at work. And that's what I like to coach people on as well. Look at that angle. That's what I think when I think about balance. I'm like, this serves what life experience do you want? And include your work in that. And that's where I think, to Michelle's point, leaders of these companies, if they want to get the best out of their people, out of their employees, pay attention. Pay attention to what your employees want in terms of balance, and try and, yes, get the results. You're all there to serve a purpose for the company, but also try and enhance their experience in the workplace so that it feels like they are living how they want to live. And that comes down to what kind of connection and collaboration are we creating? You spend so much time around your coworkers. So are we maximizing that time?
Mm-hmm.
Are we allowing people that flexibility, and are we offering them resources to better themselves, self-awareness?
Mm-hmm.
Companies are starting to do it, but it's not happening enough.
I agree with that. I also think that probably this won't be new to everyone, but the reality is, people have choices now that they didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
We used to be limited in the way we could get a job, right? You got a job geographically close to where you lived. There was a whole bunch of things that don't exist anymore. Everybody, we're literally on almost we're in a different planet. Like it's not the same. People can leave a job and get another job and never leave their house, potentially for more money. So that reality, and I'm not saying it's for every job, everyone, I am saying that it behooves you as leaders to do what Mark is saying and do what I am saying as individuals, which is think about how you're showing up every day. Think about what actually gives you a positive experience, and starting to understand, everybody, that we're not going back.
Mm-hmm.
We are not going back to the Industrial Revolution. We are not going back to, we're not even going back to last week. Things are quickly evolving, and this balance, it's not a luxury item. I think that's maybe the more direct way I'm doing this on my one-on-one coaching, everybody, is I'm looking at leaders, or all of you, in the eyeballs and saying, you don't really have a choice here, because this is evolving. It is going to continue to evolve. And for you to feel in some level of control of your life and your work experience, it really is up to you to do what we're saying, which is get intentional, care about this, know that it's a real thing. If you are creating an organization from scratch, like we said, congratulations, please do it on purpose. Think about the experience that you want to have, not just your culture as a nice thing on your website or something that is fun to talk about, but the actual work experience that your people are having. What do they want to have? How long can you keep them? What's going to create a fun, loyal experience for them? And you can kick ass in the workplace by killing your competitors and having amazing results. You can have both.
You can. And personally, you'll find it very fulfilling if you are mindful about results and providing an amazing experience for your people. And I think as we wrap it up, we get to bring it full circle back to our dear friend, Sean Lippman. I use him as a benchmark all the time. Started with 3 other founders, 2 software engineers that had the kick-ass product that has made the company what it is today. And Sean and Gary, who said, this is great. This will be game-changing. This will solve a lot of problems for people out there. This will make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. But
we need to be culture-driven, adjacent to that at every step. And Sean even knew, as we're going to grow, there's going to be teething problems, and we must stay the course with culture. One of our important KPIs or metrics is going to be turnover. We're going to be looking at that as much as we're looking at profit and loss? How many people can we keep? And people are going to want to leave, and we need to celebrate that and foster that for them, because we care about people. We care about the people that come into our care. If this doesn't work for them, we need to find what does. And he genuinely means it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more leaders can take note, right, Chris?
Look, I think that Sean is one example. Maybe we'll do some more of these and maybe even interview some of those people. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
And maybe pose the question, right? Like, how are you creating balance in your organization? What does this mean? And for all of you who are cynical and skeptical about this, which I know there are some of you are my clients.
No.
Love ya. Anyway, this isn't about being soft versus hard driving. There's a whole bunch of ways to think about this. And, Mark and I talked a lot about this. We won't waste your time, but Ian and I were talking about it because I'm like, you're a tough guy. You came from rugby, and that's important for you all to know, right? Like, who am I and what is my preference? And do these more collaborative, what we're calling feminine energy. But if you don't like that language, by the way, because it feels too yucky to you, don't use that language. But think about what is balance to you. Because like I was saying, this kind of finding a balance is important. Mm-hmm. You can put your own words to it, everybody, but it is important that you put some words to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I put metrics to it as well for benchmarks. Chris, I've told you this, but I make it a point with every client I coach one-on-one. We always start with a check-in where they will score themselves, just to give them something. And you're astounded how many people haven't actually, like, they struggle when I say, what would you give yourself out of 10 for your mood right now? It's like, what would I give myself? And it's like, well, further to that, you have to establish what your 10 out of 10 is. What does that look like? People don't know. Mm-hmm. So start there. What does my 10 out of 10 look like? And then you'll start to find how work fits into that. How your work experience serves a 10 out of 10 and what it looks like, and keep checking in. Mental score out of 10, physical score out of 10. Surely we all want to be a 10 out of 10 in all three pillars of wellness, I call them. If you're not, ask yourself why. And for most people, yeah.
Wouldn't it be great to keep everybody like at a 6 to a 10 all the time? Wouldn't that be a great leadership goal?
It'd be a different world. It would be a different world. And that's what you and I are doing our best to.
We're ushering it in, everybody.
Yeah, we're playing our part. And I'm a 9.5 out of 10 in all of those right now, by the way, before you ask, Chris. Thanks.
Very nice.
Thanks to this experience.
I love that. Okay, well, this has been fun. And thanks for all the people with the emojis in the chat. I really love that. So I guess for now, we're going to say, we're going to ask Mission Control, Heather. The awesome Heather, to take our PowerPoint slides, probably put them in a PDF and put them on both of our LinkedIn profiles. So all of you can have access to that. And look for us to do more on this. Maybe we'll break this down and invite some people to come in and talk about this with us, because this is happening.
Same time next week. Is that what you're saying, Chris?
I like it. Same time every Friday.
Check our schedules. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Chris. You're amazing.
Okay. Love ya.